73rd episode of the Masterclass. My name is Cam, and I am joined by Dave.
Shalom.
I don't. How does one respond to shalom? And shalom be upon you as well.
Shalom. Shalom to you as well.
I don't know. I took Greek, not Hebrew. Sorry. Rachel would have had the right response. Maybe she can write in and tell us what the right response would be.
Namaste.
You gonna go? Namaste. Such a bad joke. I also realize that the only time I talk like I do in the intro is when I'm doing the intro to this show.
It's all right.
It's like my intro voice.
Your intro voice.
I feel like I need to drop it down an octave or two. Welcome to the Masterclass. That might send the wrong vibes. I don't know. I'm not really sure.
Kind of Johnny Fever-ish.
All right. I might be showing my age
Or
here.
Venus Flytrap.
I'm 0 for 2 on those references.
That's WKRP in Cincinnati.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Got
He was supposed to be Venus Rising, but then he panicked in the moment and said Venus Flytrap on the air.
Whoops.
And so he became Venus Flytrap. And that was the soulful black DJ that was on at night.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then Johnny was just the lovable stoner type DJ.
Oh.
It's what I thought Johnny Dare looked like for many years.
Who's that?
He's a DJ on 98.9 The Rock here in Kansas City.
Oh, okay.
But
Man,
Johnny Dare is
not his real name. Can't be.
no, it's not his real name. He's a very cool guy though.
I'm not judging him. I'm just saying there's no way his name's Johnny Dare. Otherwise his parents win everything.
Okay, the best name is the IndyCar racer, Will Power.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, Will Power.
Oh my gosh. That's fantastic. That name could have gone really badly though.
It could have.
They named him like, White or something awful like that. Will Power though, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's Power, not Powers.
No, it's Power. Will Power.
That's pretty
so I'm
fantastic.
sure his name is William Power. But
yeah, but you know what his parents are going for.
Exactly. So
that's
he goes,
awesome.
and he's pretty good. So.
Well,
yeah.
That makes me like 0 for 4, 0 for 5 on your references thus far. We're off to
how old I am.
Smashing start. But yes, this is episode 73. We are back in a regular routine, and barring anything unforeseen, we should be in that regular routine for a while now.
We should be. Yes.
Which is exciting for us because that allows us to sort of plan and look forward to what we're going to be talking about instead of
ad-libbing an entire show.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm
know.
just saying that we've had some time to plan, and we kind of have the groundwork for the next few episodes laid already. So I'm looking forward to getting back into the regular routine that the school year and the fall affords us.
Yes.
So that being said, we have no follow-up.
Yes.
Which is okay. I mean, it's not terribly exciting, but it is okay. No funny pictures of Jesus this week.
No. None at all.
Sorry, the audio or video podcast, that would have been funnier. Dave made a goofy face. I describe it to you, but the moment is gone. It's fleeting.
Guess you had to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I alone experienced that moment. In the universe, I'm the only one. That makes me feel pretty special, Dave. Thank you for that.
Anytime.
All right, this is getting super weird. Anything that you want to talk about before we dive into today's passage?
Well, under follow-up, you have in our show notes, nothing to see here, sad panda. And actually, the pandas are very happy because they've been taken off the endangered list.
Well, certain types of pandas, right?
The giant pandas or whatever they're called.
Yeah, the big black and white ones.
What are those called?
I think they're called giant pandas.
Yes.
Skadoosh.
What people think of when they see panda
Mm-hmm.
has been taken off the endangered list.
They're still vulnerable, though, I saw.
Yeah.
Which I suppose is a step up.
Yep. They're making steps in the right direction.
And that is this week's Conservation Corner. I almost said Conversation Corner, which is not at
kind
all
of
correct.
randomness to start the show tonight.
Well, our minds are there's other things going on in the world.
Absolutely.
But yay for pandas.
I do like pandas.
Bamboo forests beware.
Yes.
We're doing so good. We're definitely on the verge of professional podcasting here.
Yes. I guess this is what happens when you've been doing it for a while and
Yeah, you just get this good.
you're not nervous anymore.
No, I've not been nervous for a long time.
I know. I haven't either.
So I don't know if that's probably an okay thing.
It is. Yes.
All right. Well, in spite of more silly banter,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps we should move on to our passage here in Matthew, where we're going to get to witness a little banter between Jesus and
This is true.
the chief elders.
Yes.
How's that for a professional segue?
That's beautiful.
Thank you. I
Absolutely.
might frame it later. Haven't quite worked out how, but I'll let you know. Do you want to read?
Sure. So we're at Matthew 21, verses 23 through 27. And when he entered the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people came up to him as he was teaching and said, "By what authority are you doing these things? And who gave you this authority?" Jesus answered them, I will ask you one question, and if you tell me the answer, then I also will tell you by what authority I do these things. The baptism of John, from where did it come? From heaven or from men? And they discussed it among themselves, saying, if we say from heaven, he will say to us, why then did you not believe him? But if we say from man, we are afraid of the crowd, for they all hold that John was a prophet. So they answered Jesus, we do not know. And he said to them, neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things.
All right. Are you ready for a really sacrilegious metaphor here?
Oh, I don't know.
How familiar are you with Family Feud?
I am familiar with Richard Dawson Family Feud.
Was he the creepy
And
old guy that
not-
tried to kiss all the ladies?
Yes.
Don't like
And
him.
not the Steve Harvey. Is it Steve Harvey?
Yeah,
Steve
he's
Harvey.
a genius.
And he's funny.
It's so good.
But most of what I've seen his is kind of the goofy stuff that's like on YouTube versus.
His reactions are priceless.
Oh,
Like, I'm going to have
I
to
would
find
agree
the
with that.
best of and put it in. And some of it probably won't be appropriate in quotes, but it's hysterical. It's so funny.
Steve Harvey also has a good little
Intro to
like-
Jesus?
yes.
Oh, yeah, it's so good. The whole stadium goes nuts.
It's very cool.
And yeah, I got shown that in my Greek class in college, and I've probably seen it 10 or 12 times, and I still get like worked up watching it. Anyhow, my metaphor was not specifically about Steve Harvey, but when Jesus asked them this question and they all huddle together and talk about it, I picture
the
family
Family
and Family
Feud.
Feud talking, and then they just throw out like the worst idea ever. I don't know if I'll be able to find this exact video, but there is
That's a good visual though of what I can see them all huddling and being.
and then they come back and just go
yeah.
pass.
We don't know.
Which I suppose is better than giving a ridiculous answer. But there was one Family Feud in particular where it's words that end in pork, words that begin with pork.
So pork chop,
Pork chop, pork line, pork
Pork-
loin, but
yeah.
Southern, really, really thick Southern accent. And they get to, this one family
How
member.
many answers were there? Like 4?
No, there was like 5.
No, there's 5.
Yeah. Yeah, so many more than 4, Dave. So many. And he goes, all right, whatever your name is, tell me a word that begins with pork. And he goes, cupine.
Oh my!
And Steve Harvey
It was on there, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. But Steve Harvey does the classic, body just goes numb, and he just can't. And he looks at him, and everyone in the crowd is laughing, and his family's all doing the woo, great answer, like they do no matter what you say, even if they know you're an idiot. And he just goes, "Did you just say cupine, like pork cupine?" He didn't realize that it was. It was just everything about it was perfect. Everything about it was perfect. His reaction. So I imagine, while Jesus may not have reacted in that exact way to these elders when they said, "We don't know," I imagine he had a very wry smile on his face because he's like, "I know you know. You just don't want to say it."
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, for whatever reason, I didn't even think of it until you were reading it, and I just got struck with they're like Family Feud huddling right now. So for whatever that's worth, there that is.
Yes.
But all right, if we go back to the beginning of the passage, I think the elders are actually they're asking a legitimate question. This dude is teaching in the temple.
Yes.
Which is not a place for novices or people without authority to teach. Like the temple is the place where you go to make sacrifices to God and to get taught the word of God. Like you're not just gonna walk into a church nowadays with zero. Well, I shouldn't say.
They probably won't let you.
Yeah, but you can't just walk on stage and start preaching a sermon without the requisite experience and knowledge, right? You would hope so, at least.
Yes.
And so when the chief elders and priests walk out and say, "Whoa, by what authority are you doing this stuff? And who gave this authority?" I think that's a legitimate question. You're teaching in the temple. We've heard all these stories about you. Explain how and why you're doing this.
Right.
I got zero problem with that question.
Absolutely.
Which is why Jesus' response is a little weird to me. I'll also ask you a question. And if you can tell me the answer, then I will tell you the answer to the question you asked me first. And they go along with it.
Yes.
I'm so confused at this point. I'd be like, time out, bro. I'm a chief priest in the temple that you're teaching in. You answer my question first. I'm pulling rank, which is probably what he wanted them to do. Because that's, the exact response that would show their true heart, really, of who do you think you are? But I think on the surface of it, like I said, they're asking a legitimate question, and then he's the one that kind of throws the curveball. And usually they're trying to trap him or trick him or get him to contradict himself or the law. And they seem on the surface to be coming at him straight, like, what authority are you doing this on? Because you can't just come in here and start teaching.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. On what authority? For the most of the time that I read this verse, I sort of equated the authority with kind of Jesus' question that he asked him later in terms of John the Baptist. Is he saying, is this from heaven or is this from man? And that was kind of the authority that I thought they were referring to with Jesus.
Oh.
But I don't think it is. I don't think it is. In recent times of my life, last few years, I've kind of had this realization of that the chief priests or the elders are going to have this perspective of who is your rabbi? Like they're saying, who taught you? And
Rabbi Jake.
Yeah. Because there's this element of, okay, here Jesus shows up. I think there's kind of a given that he teaches with authority. He teaches with wisdom. He teaches people are hearing what Jesus says.
And they marvel and they wonder at the authority with which he speaks. Like, this is a repeated thing.
Yeah. And so they're asking each other going, who's this guy's rabbi? And as they're talking to each other, and probably start researching who Jesus is, they start going, he doesn't have a rabbi. He doesn't have anybody that imparted this knowledge to him. I think we talked about this an episode or two ago, that the priest would have come from Aaron in
The house of Levi.
the house of Levi, and Jesus was the house of Judah, the tribe of Judah. And so there's even that piece too of, this guy isn't even the right tribe to be here in the temple teaching with authority. So I remember just kind of having that revelation of just going, wow, there's kind of multiple levels to this, of in terms of whose authority are you teaching under. And
So maybe their question wasn't as innocent as I had assumed.
I think it's a genuine question. I don't have a problem with that, and I'm not saying I'm right, but
Well, you don't think there could be an accusatory tone if
I
they're
think
really
there's
saying
an
like,
accusatory.
"Who's your rabbi, bro?" Like,
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I think there's a little bit of that, but I also think there's this just sort of they've acknowledged that he's teaching with authority. There's, what he is saying holds up. He's not saying things that people are like, this is not true. You're speaking blasphemy. I really do, for the most part, they're like going, his teaching is solid. And so, while there might be an accusatory element, I think there is that sense of, how do you know what you know if you haven't been trained, if you're not a Levite, if you're not,
So perhaps the somewhat natural reaction of, "Holy cow, that's amazing," but I'm still really skeptical. Like tell me how you're doing this, because this doesn't make sense that you can do that. That's sort of like awe and skepticism you have when you come across something that doesn't quite fit your mold for how things should be.
Well, and he's definitely on their turf. I mean, he's definitely not where he belongs.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I can relate to that if I think somebody's stepped beyond their bounds and they're not, hey, you're not the authority here. Hey, you don't have the right to be speaking the way you're speaking. I get that. I mean, calling somebody out on that. So, the second piece is why did Jesus respond with a question of his own? And I don't claim to be an authority on this topic, but my understanding, and again, this is a relatively new revelation for me, is that for the Jews in the temple, when they are in a debate on things, it is perfectly acceptable, if not normal, to respond with a question. That is kind of the practice of
The Socratic method, if you will.
Well,
kind of. Not really. Never mind.
the
Scratch
Hebraic,
that.
The Hebraic Jew method. I don't know. The Hebraic priest
The
method.
HJM. It's classic.
So yeah, so I think him asking a question in response to them is not completely, like, they wouldn't. I don't think they'd have been offended by that or taken back by that. I think that would have been a normal banter, and appropriate.
Could you imagine if we did that on a regular basis now?
Drives me crazy.
Would you like fries with that? Well, let me ask you a question first. What's the square root of 2? Only then will I tell you if I want fries with that. I realize ridiculous application, but just consider. Never mind. That's a really dumb thought trail. I've had a really other dumb one that I'll mention later. I'm going to write it down so I don't forget, but we're going to save that to the end of the show because it's totally not important. So you don't think it's weird that he responded with a question? Or not out of place, I should say.
It's not out of place, and again, I don't claim to be an expert on this topic, but I do believe that Jewish debating in the earliest days of when Jesus was around, that answering a question answering a question with a question was not. You were not being a smart, you know.
Alec.
Yeah, you weren't being a smart aleck. You weren't um, trying to offend somebody. You weren't trying to, but you had to have. At the same time, you had to have a good question. You had to have like sort of a valid, in context sort of question, which I do believe Jesus does here, because ultimately his question is about authority as well. It's about
Yeah. So I think, his question being about authority, I think, leads us to the next point of trying to get these elders and chief priests to admit where true authority comes from. When he says, did John's authority come from heaven or from man? And for once, he's putting them in a tough place. And we can see by their response that they don't handle the tough place nearly as well as he does. So to counter their question about authority, he says, the baptism of John, where did it come from? From heaven or from man? And they got in their family feud huddle and they discussed it. And they say, if we say from heaven, he will say to us, why then did you not believe him? So we can't say that because we're going to paint ourselves in a bad light. But if we say from man, we're afraid of the crowd, for they all hold that John was a prophet. So if we say the first thing, we're going to look bad and like we don't, understand scripture and God. But if we say the other thing, we run the risk of losing face in front of all the people that kind of hold us in the position we have. And they don't know what to do. So they turn and do what's quite possibly the worst thing and say, we don't know. Which I think just makes them look like idiots.
Yes, I would absolutely agree.
And so you have to believe that Jesus knows exactly what he's doing here.
Mm-hmm.
He can see past the legitimate question to them trying to perhaps put him in his place or perhaps try and get him to say something, and they're not doing it as they usually have in the past, but he sees, as is explained in other places in Scripture, he can see the intent or the state of their hearts and realizes what they're trying to do. And so he pulls a fast one on them and asks them a question, knowing that they're either going to have to admit that they were wrong or they're going to have to tell the people a lie, or they're going to have to tuck tail and run, which is what they choose to do, which I think is really sad because it's an opportunity for these people to admit they made a mistake. And I imagine that Jesus would have reacted in a very compassionate way to them for admitting, it came from heaven. We made a mistake.
Yep.
We were wrong. Because anytime anyone does that in Scripture, Jesus is immediately compassionate and immediately is forgiving and immediately is embracing of those people.
Yes.
And so while he may be trying to pull a fast one, he's also offering them an olive branch, saying, just own up to it, and all is forgiven. That's all you got to do is just own up to it. And they don't do that.
No. And one of the things that I learned in preparing for tonight was that John the Baptist was pretty well accepted. Like, and I
even though he's kind of a crazy guy living out there in the wilderness, eating locusts with hairy cloth
and honey. Yeah, I mean, I really had never really spent much time learning about John the Baptist, and didn't spend an inordinate amount of time doing it for the preparation of this. But everything I could find basically was this sort of acknowledgement of that John the Baptist was a man of God. That he was respected by many, and there's sort of this sense of there's a good chance that a lot of the people that are here dealing with Jesus right now were baptized by John the Baptist.
Including Jesus himself.
Now, there's nothing that you can draw an exact that this priest or this elder was baptized by Jesus and he was there. But people that are much smarter than I am and who have studied this in depth arrive at that sort of conclusion that when Jesus brings up John the Baptist, he's sort of bringing up this, you know, there's not a lot of controversy around him. And I'm going to speak out of a little bit of ignorance here, but the fact that we're at Matthew 21, I'm going to assume that John the Baptist is probably already dead, but I don't know that factually. I can't say without reservation. And so
I do not know.
I don't know, but I'm guessing that he was dead this far into the book. And you think about somebody that dies for what they believe in. King Herod was not revered by the religious folks, and so here's a guy that has died at King Herod, and I'm guessing that probably only added to his legitimacy, to his sort of reputation, and so yeah, good for Jesus and the fact that he's kind of drawing on a he's got a pretty solid drawing a blank here, but he's drawing from a very solid example for them to answer this question, because if they're honest, pretty quickly they're probably going to say this guy's from God, but they realize that that's a catch-22 for them if they say that.
Indeed, but they didn't know it was a catch-22 because that book hadn't been written yet.
Nope.
I wonder what their name for it was.
Don't know.
Well, this is
a rock in a hard place.
Something like, I'm yoked with an ox walking in the other direction. We're at a standstill.
Going in circles.
Indeed. All right, so his response to their weak answer of "we do not know" is, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things." So, makes sense, right? They've got a question. He says, "First, you've got to answer my question." Mwahahaha. They don't answer his question, so he doesn't tell them the answer. Seems fair. My question, though, is, does he not tell them the answer to their question because they were unwilling to admit their sin or that they were wrong? But aren't those also the people that need him the most? Like, I feel like he should have told him anyways.
Good point.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, I realize that you didn't answer the question, but I still am going to tell you why I'm doing this, because you people need to get over yourselves and realize by what authority I do this. And maybe he felt like everything he'd done up to that point was proof positive of the authority that he did have. You know, obviously I wasn't there, and obviously I'm not privy to, his internal thoughts, but it just seems like of all the people that need to know, the self-righteous are at the top of the list.
Yeah, and just an initial thought on that, I guess, is sort of the probably do need him the most, but there's got to sort of be this step towards Jesus, and the step towards Jesus would probably be humility. And I think even in the fact of, well, we don't know, they could have been humble in that, but they weren't. It was more of a, unfortunately for them, Jesus probably knows what their thought process is and plays it to his advantage.
Unfortunately for all of us.
Yeah. And I think he's aware that there's no humility involved in that "I don't know." Because
it's all self-preservation, for sure. Yeah, there's
right.
no humility there.
Because as a
whatsoever.
Christian, there's nothing wrong with saying, "I don't know." There's nothing wrong with saying, "Jesus, I don't know, show me." But their "I don't know" was, like you said, self-preservation. There was not this humility to it. It was
totally prideful, because they wanted by admitting they didn't know, they somehow thought that was protecting their position, as opposed to admitting they're wrong or lying. They took the agnostic path of, I'm not sure, which
it could be or could not be.
Just, makes them look silly. So
yeah, I would definitely say that they need him the most. But even in that, I definitely believe that there's an element of sort of humility and making that movement towards Jesus, which I don't think they were really willing to do.
I think that right there, the gift that God has of forgiveness and us, taking a step to receive it. I think that is something that I always struggle with. Because God loves everyone. And everyone can be saved. But like there has to be that conscious choice on our part to say, yeah, I see the reality of my situation as best as I can see it. And I know as best as I can know that I'm a sinner and that I need to be saved. And the only way that I can be saved is through Christ, not through, like those steps have to happen. And I think as someone, who has, crossed over that little bridge or, however you want to phrase it, or someone who is crossing over, I always want to be like, can't we just like throw a rope and lasso some people and pull them across? Like, just get over here. Trust me. You'll like it. You'll like it once you're, and so when I see him just say, all right, I'm not going to answer your question. Have a nice day. I'm just kind of like, oh man, you missed an opportunity to, remove the veil. But this whole, not even concept, but this whole reality of choice in life is, I think, far more serious than I have been willing to admit, I think. Like the decisions that I make, whether they're godly decisions or sinful decisions, each of those decisions is a choice that I intentionally make. And those decisions carry weight. And in this instance, the decision of the elders and chief priests to totally try and just get out of the situation without taking too much damage was a choice for self-preservation and pride, as opposed to a choice of humility and admittance. And from that standpoint, then yeah, I think that Jesus' response is justified. It's just, I think my upbringing in the church, just saying like, but Jesus was a nice guy, and being a Christian's about being a nice guy and all that stuff. And that's not really, how it works. And you reap what you sow, as the Bible says. And if we are unwilling to make good choices, then we can't expect to make bad choices and still be rewarded as if we had made good choices. And while that seems rather binary, and doesn't really perhaps take into account God's grace, which is a huge thing, it's just something that I'm trying to work through. Of why did Jesus at this point say, nope, okay, we're done here? Where in other situations, I'm reminded of the point where he's talking to the woman and pretty much says that she's a dog and she's not worthy to eat at the table. But she says,
even the dogs eat the crumbs.
Yeah, and then he stops and goes, okay, she gets it. Like he said something offensive, and she totally took it in stride and in humility said, but even the dogs, as you said, get the scraps from the table. And immediately he had compassion and stopped and told everyone what great faith she had. And so how do we uphold that sort of veracity? No, that's not the right word. How do we uphold that sort of strong stance for the truth in the way that he did, where he's willing, he holds it, and then the second you admit that you need it, all of a sudden, like it seems, I don't know, it just seems difficult. Like how do you encompass that? How do you live that way? Because people aren't my favorite, but I think generally I'm a really nice guy. I think so. I treat people with respect. I'm nice to people. I help people out. I'm still incredibly selfish, but like overall, I'm a nice guy. And in that moment where Jesus is like, "All right, I'm done," I'd be like, "Oh, I know you answered wrong, but please, please, please." Like, I wouldn't have the restraint, I don't think. Or I'd pull the opposite and be like, "You get out of my temple, or I'm gonna you up," like, you know. So I'm confused. Hopefully, that is what's coming across here in the midst of my ramblings. I just don't get how he does what he does. He's mystifying to me.
Yeah, and the only thought that just comes to my mind is that he sees beyond that outward sort of facade that we put out there and sees to the heart and knows where people really are, where for us that's far more difficult to do. And I guess ultimately I'm grateful that it's not my place to do. So yeah, I think he has more information than we have, and ultimately I think it's that heart condition and where is somebody truly at? Because I even think about like the rich young ruler that came to him, and he saw much more than just the right answer. He saw the heart condition. Because I think there are other people that could come to him and say much of what the rich young ruler said and kind of answered them. Then, great, by grace you're saved, and I'm going to let you into the kingdom of heaven. So, and I don't know that I really have the answer, but that's just sort of my initial kind of gut reaction to that. Is I think he has more information that we do, and again,
I sure hope he has more information than we do.
Can see to that heart condition that we just can't.
Yeah.
See to.
Well,
it goes by very fast.
It does.
I'm always surprised.
That does, friends, dearest listeners, bring us to the end of the 73rd edition of the Masterclass, and we are so glad that you listened. It really does. Still, a year and 9 months later.
Yeah. Pretty close.
Still kind of blows our mind that we make this and we put it on the internet and people listen. That's just really cool. and not even that, people respond, and you guys and ladies, you send in your thoughts and you send in questions and you send in funny photos. This is all really, really cool, and we would love if you guys would keep doing that, because it gives us something new and exciting and unexpected to look forward to every episode. And
yes.
Quite often, the questions or responses you guys have cause us to think and contemplate stuff from a totally different perspective that we haven't considered before, which is great for us because we get to learn, and great for other listeners because they get to hear your perspective and your experience and your wisdom as well, and we all get to learn and we all get to grow, and that's just really awesome. It's one of the really cool things about the internet. So if you would like to share either a question or a response, or really frankly anything else, you can do that in a few very simple ways. You can email us hello@supermegacorp.net. You can message Dave on Twitter. He's at 108HBO, where 8 is the only number. And I am at Cam Brennan. You can also get the show notes for this episode in your podcast app of choice, and also at supermegacorp.net/masterclash. No, not masterclash, /masterclass/73. And we'll be back next week with episode 74.
See you then.
Okay, post show, real quick. So the dumb idea I had earlier when you were asking, when you were like pretending to be the elders, and they're like, "Who's your rabbi?" How cool if you had been like, "My rabbi's Rabbi T," and it spells rabbit first of all. So it's like a Hasidic. What I'm viewing, and I know they weren't Hasidic Jews back then. I'm mashing a lot of ideas here. Is a Hasidic Jew Instead of the curly hair, he's got rabbit ears, and he also looks like Mr. T. But he's got the like
He has rabbit ears and he looks like Mr. T.
Well, okay, so Rabbi T, so he's got the gold chains and he's got kind of the mohawk, and maybe his tunic has no sleeves because he's got big guns. But instead of the traditional curls, he's got the rabbit ears too. There's a reason why I didn't say this during the show. Because it would have completely derailed any chances we had of discussing anything serious. But I figured as our very first ever post-show topic, Rabbi T would be the way to go. So anyone that's listening to this point, first of all, congratulations. Secondarily, if you're still listening and you have the time and the desire to create an image for Rabbi T, let your artistic license run. And we would love to see if anyone out there can come up with a compelling version of an image of Rabbi T. That would be wonderful.
Yes.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.